Today, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We've been bouncing emails and phone calls and text messages the last couple of weeks, trying to pound down a time and pin down a time that we can both talk. Michael Tingsager from the Hospitality Mavericks. He's the founder and CEO of the hospitality consultancy firm based in the UK, and he's the host of Hospitality Mavericks, the podcast. I'm really looking forward to this chat because a lot of the time I don't have the opportunity to chat to people in the macro. Like I usually get to stay with the people that are in my clique, my cocktail section, my food and beverage section. I'm really looking and delving on a macro level for our hospitality industry, and this is including hotels, SMEs, travel and transport, airlines, everything. So, and then we're going to sort of see how that leads into Michael's crystal ball for the next 5 years. So I want to say thank you very much to Michael, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Shawn. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and you're soon coming out on my show as well.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks, I think it is, without saying too much. We'll figure it out and put it in the show.
We'll figure out the date.
Yeah.
So let's kick it off. Like obviously Dutch born, based in the UK. How'd you get in the industry? Where's your starting point in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, so my original background, Shawn, I actually didn't pick up that you thought I'm not Dutch, and many people think that, but I'm not insulted by it because I love the Dutch and I worked with them for many years. I'm Danish, and Danish and Dutch goes really well together. I hope they will say the same. But I'm born and raised in the southern part of Denmark and near the German border, where my mom ran a restaurant business, and it was like a mom and pop business with when it was big, it had 8 different things. It was not a branded chain. It was, that thing that you go and you work hard and you get it done. And we're talking about the 70s, 80s here, early 90s. And my dad had a real estate business. And when I was 15, I was kicked out of my mom's business. He literally said that she fired me in principle, and said, you're going to go and work somewhere else. I've seen where you can apply for a job, and actually I have already applied for you. I filled out the application and sent it. You're going to go and probably work at McDonald's. You're going to an interview with Paul, there's the franchisee. And I was not happy with that, but I got the job. And I started cleaning in the lobby and spent about 11 years plus in McDonald's, from restaurants and to running them, and into head office roles, both in HR, operation, training, both in Denmark and the UK, and was part of an amazing journey in Denmark where we were actually, in a dire situation when I came in, and we took it up to really good sales, and also we won the Great Place to Work in Denmark. It was unheard that McDonald's did that. And then 3 consecutive years we took the number 1 space, and that was because we were very focused on the people bit, I believe, and getting the departments to work together instead of against each other. And then I joined a Danish organic cafe chain, which were expanding rapidly when I joined. So they had I was opening number 4 for them, and went on that journey with them and became reasonably quickly their head of operation and people, then turned into director, and we grew that with the 2 founders from 4 units to 27 units across Denmark. And that was an incredible journey, and learned a lot of stuff in my mid-20s. Made a lot of mistakes. I would also say that I found out something about scale and how difficult it actually is. Even though if you have all the right intention and all the right success, it can go really, really bad. And it's all come down to the people.
Coming out of that McDonald's background for so long, like I get people in the hospitality dog McDonald's, but their SOPs and their systems and their training and everything. Like if I have someone give me a resume with McDonald's on it, 9 times out of 10 I will hire them as a server, because I know they can, they think the list top to bottom for everything. And I suppose from McDonald's, where they do make it look really, really easy, and then, we're just going to open up a new store, no problems at all. There you go. Here's your manuals. You know how to do it. And then moving on to independent to scale must have been a little bit of I've got this. I can do this. This is good. And then when you actually start hitting the ground, you're like, oh, this is not as easy as I expected it to be.
And we can dive into that in a moment, actually, because the story in a way, what you're framing there gave absolutely sense, Shawn, because then that took me to about, at some point, I wanted to do my own thing. So I broke out as a consultant and worked for myself and helped with turnaround project, open restaurants. And that turned into what you presented, Hospitality Mavericks, which then became a group of people solving problems. And actually, we wanted to do something different. We wanted to dare to be different. And we really wanted to work with operators that really cared about their people and the communities they were in, and the planet, as we say today. So also about how can we actually help these companies to get in the impact zone so they actually also can make a profit, because no business works without a profit and they cannot do anything good. And then, we launched the podcast 3 years ago, and that's been quite an incredible journey, as you know, when you start something like this, where, the people you talk with, the things you learn, I will almost call it my, not certified MBA education in business and also in hospitality in a way. So, yeah, so that's the top line of us. And coming back to what you said there, with McDonald's, leaving McDonald's and going out to a more entrepreneurial business, definitely gave me some humbleness that actually, you're very lucky when you're working McDonald's, how well things works. And of course, when you're there, you complain about it not working. But when you come out, you find out you've been part of something like quite unique, and you have a quite unique skill set. And I definitely had a period where I had to learn that suddenly I have to build these systems. They are not there for me in this entrepreneurial environment, scaling the cafe business. And we were probably not quite ready to that scale. And that was probably where the wheels came up a bit. And it was not so much about scaling operation. It was more the people bit we hadn't thought through, and how we're actually going to make sure we take care of our existing people as we scale, because there's always a new shiny thing, as they say in leadership. And openings are quite shiny things. All the energy was focused on that. And then suddenly my best people started leaving me. And not because probably not because I had been a bad manager, but actually the reason why I've been a bad manager is not because I'd yelled at them or not, try to support them. I just not been there for conversation, because I was all consumed in opening the next place. And so that was a really expensive learning, because you can't replace this very easily, because these are people that grew up within the organization. You don't do that, fast track that. And it's a bit like when a well-known football club sells the core team and it just disappears. They don't win the Premiership next year or the Championship, because they just have to build up again. And that can be very expensive, I know. And that was when I actually found out the importance of this, putting people first is a very difficult discipline to do. But if you don't do that, and you don't ask your question every time you make another business decision, what is this? How is this going to impact my people, and especially my talent? I'm going to have the same time with them, or how do I actually make sure I have the same time with them when we do this kind of expansion? But yeah, that was a very, very good way of angling in there, that when you come from McDonald's, you have a different mindset about things, but you also have to be realistic and fit that into the more entrepreneurial world, or the business that has less structure and systems.
Let's dive into people a little bit deeper. Do you think that there is a fundamental misunderstanding from a lot of operators just how expensive hiring and retraining and onboarding new staff are? Because hospitality industry, obviously, it's very people move around a lot, and change jobs regularly, sometimes because of not liking the job and stuff like that. Do you think that operators don't fully understand the cost differentiation of keeping people and getting and retraining people?
Yeah, it's a difficult and dangerous area, because you can't say that it's for everyone. But what I've observed, unfortunately, the majority sometime, and it's not only, I think, in hospitality, I want to underline that, is that we sometimes forget the cost of this, because it's not visible quickly on the P&L as sales are, or food cost, or the labor cost is maybe visible quickly, but the trickle down effect that you don't have put systems in for this, because it's not about actually, a lot of people talk about care about people. I also said put people first before. It sounds a bit fluffy, but actually coming back to what is your role as a leader of a business, you call a CEO, whatever, and your primary thing have 4 responsibilities when you decide to open a business. You need to create a vision, paint a big picture, create the purpose that people want to follow, both customers and employees, because that's the only way that actually you can create a successful business. Then I know there's some businesses, they are more transactional than others, but in general, you need to create some like a very special thing to join, a special banner to be under and get people walking behind, because that actually, in a way, is a big part of planting the right seed for having, the right people on board. And then it comes to get the right people on the bus and get the wrong one off. Get the one that fits to your business and culture. Not everybody fits into every business. Very few people I met actually are very diligent in that hiring process. And also sometimes, even if there's not a person not working, they don't ask themselves, is this a wrong purple? There's just a person that's wrong, just in the wrong seat. And therefore, they maybe sometimes get rid of people they actually could have saved as well. And then there's the thing around, and the last thing, it's important that your job is to actually create systems to actually build the right culture. And then you should just get out of the way, in principle, as an operator. I think also it's a bit of the top. We like that thing. We all have this dictator in us. And I know I have to work with myself, even though I'm preaching all these things, there is that thing that you really need to think about, not creating this culture where it's top down, and often we do that because we are running behind time. And we are overwhelmed as owners, and that's because we maybe haven't put the right stepping stones in place, and that's a deeper conversation. But I think you're touching something, and you're right in a lot of it. And I don't think it's because people want to end there, but suddenly they end in the hamster wheel of stuff doing, and they're not pulling themselves out and looking at their business and asking them question. I am actually operating right now as a leader of this business. I'm on the business and not in the business. And then there's some people say it cannot work without me being in the business. And then I will ask them the question, so what about your result last year? And then they will say, yeah, it was around 2%. And then I will ask them, so why the hell do you want to do that? Because having 2% in profit margin, and I know we're in a pandemic now, so of course we can't, but in a normal baseline, why would you do that? Because you can get better return on investment on bonds almost. So why don't you just invest some money in bonds or a flat or something? That would be better return on investment. It has to start between 6 and 8%, I would say, before it's worth doing anything. And to do that, you actually need to put the right stepping stones in place. It actually means that you need to put yourself in the right place, and really from the outset, or if you're in the business, try to get out and act like that CEO. I'm not saying not going on the floor. I'm not saying not being involved in the operation, but it's all up here. It's a mindset.
But don't buy business. Like that's the big thing, is like a lot of these guys buy themselves jobs. Like I talk to people, restaurateurs that have been in the industry for 10, 15 years, had their own restaurants, and you talk to them about exit strategy. I'm like, you're going on 55, 60 years old now. Like you're not going to be, you still want to work the floor. And they're like, yeah, but I can't afford a GM, or I can't do this, or I can't. I'm like, well, then your business model is flawed. If you're not paying yourself, if you're still just taking profits at the end of the year, instead of paying yourself regularly. If I look at your P&L, if I come to buy your venue and I look at the P&L and it says that you're making profit, but you're not paying yourself, or you're not making profit, you're just taking the profit for yourself, and that's not really a healthy way to do business, especially if you're still maitre d' every Friday, Saturday night, and you're going on 55, 60. I'm like, and you can't afford to get a GM in, then your business model is massively flawed.
Yeah, and I think also that's where you end in these things, where you think you are a good leader because you are there all the time, but you're not, and you're not actually really doing the thing that makes the business great. And the people know that they work for you, and then they maybe leave, even though maybe they're not unhappy with you as a boss. It's not always being unhappy with the boss. It's just maybe feeling that they're not, the environment is not really moving in a way. And I think the pandemic is really asking us a lot of questions about how we, first of all, the conversation I had with a lot of founder, owner, CEOs, and over the pandemic there's been two conversations. There's somebody they run around, have never had more opportunity than now. They were ready for this. They had money in the bank. And then there was the one that was already, it was already difficult before the pandemic. And they really have this question where they have to ask themselves, what is it that I want to get out of life? And does the restaurant or the hospitality business I'm in actually serving me for that? And that's a very different conversation, because if you, in a principle, as you said, just run around to have a job, and I would say it's a very bad job, because there's not much holiday paid. You still have to show up 7 days a week.
You got no retirement.
Yeah, and you have no retirement. In principle, you have that in a job as well, and that could be relatively small sometimes, but you have some retirement. So I think there's some right now is definitely, if you have not already made the choices, now you have to make a choice that if I'm going back into this, I want to go back into a different way. I'll put my CEO hat on and start acting and doing things in a different way, or I'm going to continue, grinding myself down. Then if you decide to do that, I think you just ask yourself to stop and then move on, because you're never going to get a better chance to get out of it if that's what you want to do. Maybe you're not going to get out with a lot of money, but there's no short-term quick way out of hospitality when this goes back again. You have to be in for the long run, or create a Starbucks or McDonald's. And then those that are very few of, I also have to underline.
So you deal with a lot of QSRs. You deal with QSRs, independents, all the way up to like massive hotels and big chains and stuff. The one big thing I've been preaching the last couple of years is the nature of HR in the hospitality industry, especially in independent restaurants. And you were talking about like the right people in the wrong seats. I've been preaching job descriptions, and I've done so many consults with so many good friends and chatting to them about like they're always trying to figure out how to make the GM that they hired 4 years ago now fit into their new direction. And so I'm like, well, have you got a job description for this person? They're like, no, we've got nothing like that. And so a full job description saying this is what you do, and then you hire for that role. Instead of trying to fit the job around the person, actually gain a person that fits the job. Do you think that a lot of independents, again, it's that sort of, I don't want to say loosey-goosey, but this sort of passion-driven nature of, like you said, like put the CEO hat on. Like in the hospitality industry, you start off as a dishwasher, then you make your way up through the kitchen, then you do serving, and then you become a manager, and then you eventually become an owner. And this sort of perpetual hamster wheel of this is the way it's always been done, always been done, always been done. Do you find that that's the biggest probably flaw in independent restaurants, is this nature of not fully understanding how HR can help them? Because does seem like a lot of work and a daunting task to write out job descriptions for dishwashers and job descriptions for the busser and all that sort of stuff. But do you feel like it saves money long run and gets the right people in the right seats? Like you said, because it was a perfect analogy.
I think it's not about, it doesn't have to be corporate job description. It can almost just be 10 bullets about what is the expected outcomes when you want to use this for this job, the KP or the dishwasher or the server, because there is like some standard things, and you can even go and copy them from many places. I think if you're not sitting down and writing in a challenge for you, there's lots of templates when you Google it, and there's a great platform with a lot of templates on the restaurant owner. American association. I think they have more than 20,000 restaurateurs, and there's full of templates in there. And in membership for $10 a month or $20, I can't remember. So there's enough places to go and get the template and fit it into you. I think it's actually that taking that time back and say, okay, what is the outcomes that is important for me in this role? And then there is, the job description is one thing, and then there is the training you invest. And that's what I saw when I was at McDonald's. The amount of training they put up front in a new starter to make them successful, and they don't move you from a station before you master that station. So having that, patient and ability to control that and actually think about what are your training journey, because that depends on from each restaurant concept to the other, or bar concept. It's different, and you know that as well. So it's about having that, make sure that people, because most people want to do a great job, but sometimes they have not just been shown how to do a great job. So what is great in your business? And again, training system doesn't have to be, don't go and find a McDonald's training system, because again, the level of details and the amount of years and man hours that's been put into these systems, you can't copy from day one. But again, a bullet list of things in that job, or like a checklist thing. Okay, I'll score out of 100 on how do we actually perform well in the jobs? What is a great job done, in a way? Because when people know what is a great job done, they actually start to do these things without you actually have to get involved in the same way. It starts to flow, but you need to put that training up front. So I don't think it's an HR issue. I actually think it's a mindset about what you invest in people up front. And then I know there's people that are saying, well, they're going to leave very quickly. Maybe not if you invest in them up front and they feel appreciated. Then they're probably going to stay for a bit longer. And I've seen that in McDonald's. I know that the franchise operators, because again, they will have different approach what they want to spend in the training. Some of them go above and beyond what McDonald's recommend. And funny enough, those people, when you look at their turnover rates and business performance, it's in the top 10 probably. And the people that just maybe do what they need to do are probably in the middle, and the people that don't do what's recommended from the McDonald's guideline, I know that from data, they're struggling on every area. But again, because it comes with you as a leader, what mindset you have and what you believe is and where you put the money in. And I know we're talking now today in the middle of a pandemic, how should I be able to afford that? But if I was opening a restaurant in the next couple of months, or reopening or getting people back into my restaurant, I will start training now, because you have to train them to come back to a different environment. The customers have changed. How do you make customer feel safe? That's just one question. How do you make them feel safe when they come and eat there? What are you going to do to people that are really, really nervous about COVID? Where are you going to place them in the restaurant? Mm-hmm. How are you going to talk to them? How are you going to act around them? How are we gonna, what kind of menu are we gonna come back with? Have we actually thought about that? Are we coming back with a bigger menu? Probably not a good idea. I would say go back with a smaller menu. All these things need to start to be planned out now, and it comes back to training again. So coming back to your question, I don't think actually we have an HR, and I actually don't believe you need a big HR department in many companies, even big companies. People think McDonald's, I'll give you an example. McDonald's in Denmark, where I was in HR, we were 3 people serving 5,000 people in HR. But it was actually build system. Our job was to build systems to the restaurants out there. And there is systems, and you actually need to make sure your managers can do a lot of the, people call them HR thing, I just call them managing people, can actually navigate that and actually get that decision power out to your managers, no matter what bigger place you are. Because when you start actually having systemized training and systemized people practices, that's where the world starts to get easier, I believe. So I think it's not around HR. I think, again, it comes back to how you approach the way you want to build your business, and do you actually believe that investment's going to come back? And I know it's not coming back the next month, but it's going to come back over years. And that's where you need to see it. Actually, you start, suddenly there's some problems I have to recruit every week. I need to interview people every week because people are leaving. Well, then there is probably fundamental something wrong with the place, because that's not normal to want to leave so quickly.
So that's a good segue with, I want to get into staff mindset, but let's talk about ownership and management mindset. How do you change something that seems to be so ingrained in our industry? Like when you sit down with a new client and they're like, we've been having massive turnover, our turnover rate is huge, we don't seem to be able to keep staff. Because when we talk about mindset, it's always nice and easy when we listen to a podcast or watch a TED talk about changing mindset. But we are talking about, there's a lot of people out there that, like I said, that hamster wheel of perpetuating the past and the romancing, well, this is the way we've always done it, you know? How do you fundamentally stop someone and really push to change their mentality and their mindset towards running a restaurant, which they could have been doing it for 30 years this way? You know, that's a big shift. And so, as a consultant, as sitting down with someone who might be a little frazzled with turnover, especially with COVID, which we'll get into in a sec, how do you do the sort of direction of that mindset change?
Well, it's very easy if we get to the point that it's not like, okay, if you don't change, we'll walk out the door. But if we can't take the person to, it depends on where the problem is. It's not always the owner. Maybe the owner is maybe just need some skill sets on how to develop. The big word. It's called a talent strategy, but a plan for how they will do people. I think that's often because they don't know where to start. In a way, many of them. So if you start laying down, we have like a people journey plan. Where we show them these are the touch points you need to be in control. It's a bit like when you do a recipe, but it's just a bit more work you need to do here. It's not done in 5 minutes, but you need to put all these touch points in place for the way you recruit people. How do you put job advertising out? How are you actually having recruitment conversations? How many do you have? Who made the decision? And all this to how do you do contracts? How do you have a template for that? All these touch points on your people journey have to be in place. And of course, they have these things in your people journey has to facilitate your vision and your business strategy, because that's in principle what people things do. And if you start make them understand, actually, if you have a people experience journey that actually helps you implement and facilitate your vision and strategy, then actually you are getting quicker to these results. In a way, but often there's nobody stopped up and doing that. They just we do contracts because we have to, or we have a conversation and we take a blank paper from the printer and then we write some notes on there. We actually never look at them, and they make a decision if I like them or not on a gut feel. They don't really go down in detail and have some specific question they always ask. And some of the best one actually may not make the owner or the GM decide who's going to be hired. They're going to ask the staff that's been working on this with this person on a trial shift and say, do you want to hire this person? Do you want to work with him? Oh yeah, that's great. He's great. We would love to work with him. So I think it's about, again, how would you like that experience to be? Because I think it's not totally up to coincidence how your customers' experience are. It's always some kind of way. I don't know if you've seen this, Shawn. It's always thought about the customer experience. What about the employee experience? If you sit down and actually show them there is actually a model for this, there's actually a way and some touch point you need. Many of them would say, okay, so we just need to go through that journey. And that can be different length for depending on the complexity of your business and how big you are and all that. But in general, thereby, you can call it, you get this people journey. You suddenly have a strategy for how you're going to approach people. And that often make them think it's not that difficult. And then, of course, you have a handle. But also you have these times where people are just blocked. And actually, it's not so much maybe to do with the business. There could be other things. And then it's a bit out of your hand. It's not our job. And then we work with some great coaches and people that can help them unblock these personal blockers that can be sometimes. And of course, your background and environment can predict you of that. Yeah, but we can only work with people as willing to change, I will normally say. And if we can't really move forward, we don't have like a system, then it's better we walk away, because we're not going to really make it work. Because if you're not in the mind and you're not willing to go on this journey of self-development, and it is every time you do change in your business, it actually starts with you as an owner. It's your identity that is played with every time. And every time something doesn't work, it's not looking out of the window and blaming the outside circumstances. And we can do that maybe to an extent in the pandemic, but I will still ask myself, looking in the mirror, and ask, what can I do to drive my business forward? Because nobody else cares and nobody else is going to do it. But how can I actually put myself, what can I do today to put my better situation tomorrow without blaming others? And I think that's often the thing, either there's the customers there's something wrong with, and all the signals I see and get really nervous is when they say my staff is not good enough. Oof. Well, it's a shadow of you.
Yeah, I always look at it as a triangle, like, 'cause I love triangles, that staff, ownership, and customer. If all three sides are perfectly even, then everybody's happy. And as soon as you start skewing one, the thing. But let's talk about COVID. Let's get into COVID, because how have the conversations, and I hate the word pivot because everybody uses pivot so much, how have the conversations for you and your clients changed from the start of the pandemic? And I know the UK has been very much probably harder hit than Canada, because here on the west coast of Canada, we're still open. We've still got reduced hours and reduced capacity and stuff like that. But how have the conversations for you changed? Have they gone? Have they stayed the same? Have they gone to being more positive? Have they slipped into the negative a little bit? How the conversations on a ownership and management level have changed since the start of the pandemic to now?
In the beginning, there's no doubt about it. It's a long journey, isn't it? It's 12 months. It feels like it's been years, doesn't it?
It
It's
really
12
does.
months. And in the beginning, I'm involved in operations myself. So had 2 operations. So in the start of the pandemic myself, I really felt the being thrown out of over a cliff. And everybody was in panic. There was a lot of firefighting. And then I think we got to a reopening situation over the summer where there was a bit of positivity. People came back out. And then we hit November here in the UK where we had to close again. And since November, it's been really dire. And of course, everybody's been in different situations as well. As I said before, how did you operate before the pandemic and how did you go into it? We already trying out or operating quite efficiently on Deliveroo or deliveries, then you're probably in a better position than people had to start from scratch. So there's a lot of inventing on the go, and suddenly we had to become agile at a level never seen. And the industry is incredible when it comes to manage these things, but a lot of people had to get really really deep into problems before they really start innovating really quickly, because I think innovation it's a bigger issue, and that's a different conversation. But innovation is a massive challenge I think we had in the industry over the years. We almost wait sometimes till the danger comes around the corner. Nobody can do anything about a pandemic. I'm not saying that you should have seen that coming. I think there's only one man talking about pandemic before it happened, and it was Bill Gates. So but coming back to where I see now, and I think now what we've seen here in the UK, there's been a plan rolled out by the government. So the government has definitely, in my view, become more clear. But again, is there's enough support to take the industry through? I think if I listen to operators out there again, there's some, they are, a very small portion. They are having a time of their life because they're picking up properties and units, dark kitchen opportunities they've never seen before, opening potential bars and stuff like that. So if you're going into the industry and you're coming in with money, and or you are in the position of having great money, I think this is your opportunity of a lifetime. You're thinking about you're a bit in trouble before, you were still trying to figure out the new direction. These people, I think they are looking, and even very established operators, like we have a concept called Pret here in the UK. I've been surprised to see how they have crumbled because they've been dependent on city center traffic, so office workers.
Yeah.
So if you have a business in that, you are potentially screwed because 90% or 95% of your revenue was built on that. And when is that going to come back? And I don't think it's going to come back in the same thing. So I think it really depends on where you are, but in general, I think that people are positive about. They know there's a potential opening now here in April where people can eat outside and they can come inside in May. But again, it's not dates, it's data, and the government has been very clear about it's not about dates. I think they made a mistake before when they had promised dates and say if the data doesn't fit, the date will be pushed. So I think there's positivity, but there's still a lot of people, I think, they're thinking about how are we going to get through when rents starts to kick back in, because some of them have been rent free for almost 12 months where the landlord has not been able to kick them out because that's blocked by the government. VAT has been held back. It's again been pushed, very low rate at 5%. Furlough has been extended to September. So I think we still have seen a lot of problem has been pushed in front of us. We've already seen a lot of establishment close. I don't think we have the full number of what's gone into liquidation because it happens as we talk. So every week there's probably a surprise or somebody new. So I think there's still more to come. So I think they are absolutely nervous, but they are hoping. I think a lot of people are on hope and fate, and they're trying as best as they can. But again, there's only so much you can do with delivery for some concepts. Some concepts are more fitted for than others and can easily roll this out. And I think the one I think we'll see when we come on the other side, the operators that was already starting with that pre-dis will probably come out on the other side in some kind of way. And of course, again, how relevant are your concept in a post-COVID world? Does it fit what a customer wants and have?
What sort of areas of the industry do you think there's going to have to be some serious rethink and forethought? I've read a lot of articles about fine dining and the silver service style things. It is interesting because I think the doom and gloom of the hospitality industry and people being out of work inside the hospitality industry is very jammed down our throats social media wise, but there's still a significant amount of population that have had full-time jobs the whole time, haven't getting paid their full salary. While the hospitality industry is decimated for unemployment right now, there's still a lot of people who haven't changed. Like my wife just started working from home. Easy done. Where do you think the styles of venues that are going to really increase their sort of footprint post-COVID, and what are going to sort of shrink down? Like you hear the fine dining is going to slow down. Obviously QSR is going to come up. Where do you see areas? If I was a operator who was thinking about opening a new concept because I got a cheap venue, where would I be focusing my energy into?
I think again there's so many market dynamics that decides that. London is many people, when they think about the UK, they look at London. And London is a very different market than the rest of the UK because there's regional, and I think you have the same in Canada. If you go to Toronto or any of the big cities, you will see the same thing. It's a very different dynamic, and it's really depending on tourism and worker commuting. As it looks right now, that's going to be the hardest bit to bring back. Regionally, I think they did really well over summer. We work with a couple of regional here in the south where we are, and I talked with a person. They have a family, they have one restaurant. They are they're not scared of opening because they're going to be busy, but they almost want to phase it in to get them back in action because they're in a good position. They don't have to stress about it. They launched some retail products and they're doing quite well with what they're doing with that. So they almost want to phase it in and actually train back and know there's a massive pent up demand because they're really good at what they're doing. They're missed in the community because they said we're not going to do delivery because most of the people who work there is the family, so they could do something smart. With financially, they were not forced to stay open with furlough and stuff like that. So they've used the time to really think through and be strategic. And not everybody's in that position. So I think they're going to be really busy out regional because people are still going to be working. Most companies have said they're not back in the big cities and the offices before September.
Wow.
You'll maybe be allowed to go in, but it would be restriction. I think companies from a risk point of view are very cautious about pulling people back into the offices. Well, of course, will impact the restaurant industry. But in general, I think we all are desperate coming out to have this human conversation in a restaurant. And I think that's everywhere. We all want to. And also, I think even if a person like me, I love to cook, but I can't wait to come out and get a great meal again. I haven't cooked myself.
Yeah.
So I think people that's really good at doing what they do will not struggle. I think that the type of market or casual dining, we call it in the UK, I'm not sure how well that's going to do if you're not doing pizza really well as a casual dining concept or burgers, because it's a bit more expensive than QSR, often significantly more expensive. But then you might rather support a local restaurant where you get that premium experience. And you can already feel that during the pandemic, the focusing on local. And then there's the whole focusing on planet and the circular economy and all that. It's really, really changing, I think. And people are really aware about their local businesses has been hit. So I think unconscious they will go and support them. So I think big casual dining chains will struggle. And I think you will see some of them fall, especially in the UK, where there's a big market, a mid-market for that. And you already seen some of them be bought for peanuts. One that was valued at 120 million pounds 3-4 years ago had now been sold for, I think it was 6 or 7 million pounds. Unheard, bargain. if you can bring it back and bring in the quality and the expectation the customers have. Because I think they are now asking themselves, is it actually worth going to a chain to get do I actually get the right quality and so on? But I'm not saying all of them are like that. There's some of them are really doing well job, but I think the casual dining sector, that mid thing, either you're QSR where you drive on speed and price, or you are in the higher end where you're focusing on the experience. And I think there will always be a market for the really, really high end, the crazy chef that does the crazy restaurant. It's more about, have they run out of money during the pandemic? Because often they are very cash dependent places, because that everything they do, the people they hire, there has to be the top of the top. It's expensive. It's like Formula One cost, from a restaurant point of view. So again, but there will always be new ones. There'll always be new ones of those, and they comes and goes. It's a bit like theater plays; they come and go, and some of them, sustain over lifetimes, and they others they just come up for 4 or 5 years. So, yeah, I think regional casual dining is in a really bad place. QSR, as you said, it's gonna just grow and grow and grow. And if you've seen the latest numbers for McDonald's and Chipotle, then you know that's just an indicator about how well that's marked. But also there's pure QSR operators that will be sifted out now.
So let's flip it a little bit, because I'm curious about staffing in the UK and overall. I'm hearing from Australia, from friends, that Australia's in a really bad way because Australia deported any non outside working visa, and if you had a working visa in Australia, you had to go home. So I think in North America we're going to be fine, because I still think there's a huge populace of hospitality workers that, even if we lose a couple of % to new jobs and new endeavors over this last year, we're still going to succeed, because we're going to have reduced staffing anyway. But I've been preaching since the very beginning of COVID that if, as a staff person in the hospitality industry, if you aren't bettering yourself during this time, doing coursework and like W sets and bar smarts and all these sort of different elements, what's the staffing outlook? I think we're going to have a very wide puddle and a very deep puddle to sort of draw from. How the UK sort of looking at it? Are you having a massive exodus of staff leaving the industry, or do you think that there's still a substantial workforce there?
So this is going to be something I tell from my gut and what I hear from people. I cannot pull out a statistic. The UK, especially in London and around there, was previously heavily influenced by European workers coming to the UK, because the movement of workforce was easily. You can just travel in and you can stay here and you can work here without any problem. You didn't need to go through a big immigration thing to do it. So it's actually easier than to go to Australia, in principle, to work. And Brexit has happened. We are not part of the European Union in Britain anymore. We don't know the full consequence of that, but that will have an impact. It's not as attractive to go to the UK and work anymore. And I also think there's a lot of these people that has, when the pandemic broke out and they were put on furlough or lost their job for whatever the situation was, they didn't shield and stayed in London because they maybe had a very expensive rent, and they quite quickly find out, okay, this is not going to go over tomorrow, and I'm not going to go back in my job tomorrow. I'll go home to my family in Spain, Germany, wherever I'm from, and actually stay there and save some money. And then some of them I know, because we've been in this situation ourselves, they came home to the family and find out, I don't want to leave the family. And actually I can't find a job now because I have some experience, and maybe especially managers, I've heard is the case for many. And they're thinking about, why should I go back to live around? And now I'm talking about London specifically. I think it can be a bit different if you're regional. It's a very different life, but the cost is still high in the UK. Why should I go back and live in a room for £800 a month in London? And if you say that in an average frontline employee that's just getting by gets between £1,200 to £1,800, depending on tips and all those kind of things, it's not a lot of money you keep over, and it's not, the exchange rate is not that great anymore because of Brexit as well. So it's not like you are taking a massive amount back home, and that was actually why many came, to especially from Eastern Europe to put some savings in place. So I don't think we know the full scope of it yet, but also because the UK is driven by this European workforce, or have been. I think you will see as we start opening up, it's going to be difficult to fulfill just arms and legs to serve the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that you don't have a culture. You don't have like in Germany, France, and Denmark, where I'm from, there's like a career in hospitality. It's not like really something you do in the UK. So there's like maybe a potential big talent cliff coming up ahead. Somebody call it the war of talent, but actually the problem is there's actually not enough people that might not want to work in the industry. So we actually have to think about how we actually, how do we build that employer brand as an industry?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of great opportunities in hospitality for a lot of people. I took myself that way. But I think we're going to be in a very difficult situation over the coming 12 months as we open. How deep it's going to be, I don't know. I think it's going to be deeper for some people than others. I think that the more attractive you are as employer, and we have a company here in the UK, I think that's done incredible well by not only communicating well inside about what they do for the employees, but it told the story externally, called Honest Burger. And they're now changing the way they're working as well. So they're working more agile. They're putting decision making out into the restaurant managers' hands and the restaurant leadership teams, and they're changing their ops managers to be called coaches. So they are more facilitators. So that there's definitely some people I found out, and I don't know how that comes out in practice because I haven't talked with anyone from inside the organization yet. But I'm sure that that's a way of creating a workplace that is attractive to be in. Because if you don't create that, and don't create that people journey we talked about, that's absolutely unique to your culture, then I think you're going to struggle, because there's going to be fewer hands to the jobs that needs to be done. So yeah, I think we're going to see similar things like in Australia, where I've been in contact with people as well. But how deep and how long that's going to go on, it's a big question. But I definitely think if I was a CEO of a restaurant business or run my own business, that's probably where I would put my focus, because that's one of the biggest things you can influence right now. There's a lot of the other things you cannot influence. You cannot influence how much support you're going to get from the government. You can try, and you can participate in petitions and things like that. But the real impact is actually how are you going to be one of the most attractive employers in the industry. So when, or in the city, let's just say if it's independent operator in the city. So when you come back and you need to hire people, they come to you. Or how can you start that journey so you over time become that person or company they want to join? Because I think that, and Danny Meyer touched on in a prediction of the future as well in New York last week, where he said that our biggest job is going to be getting the people we have back safe and really well prepared for this, and then make sure that we are attracted to the people who want to have a job again in the industry, because it's going to be a fight of the people in New York as well. So I think it's a big city phenomenon in general. Is there enough hands to get back? But in the UK, there is some big challenges ahead with that, and how deep it's going to be, it's still to be discovered. But I think prepare for the worst, and then maybe you get surprised. But I think it's going to be really difficult to get really great people, because there's going to be very few of them, and you want them.
So I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're busy and you got to finish your day off. But let's get your crystal ball out and let's get your crystal ball out and let's give a macro overview of the hospitality industry in the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's a big question, Shawn. 5 years after this year, you almost don't want to put your hat on that. I think we're gonna go through 3 phases. I think we are now we're ending this phase I call the pandemic, the temporary phase of paradigm, and we are going into a rebuild where I think you will see some things maybe change hands of ownership. and you will see that be reinvigorated. You will see new concepts, new ways of doing things you haven't seen any before, and you will see this rise of technology. I think we just scratched the surface about how technology can help us improve our employee and customer experience in general, and how we actually can become a lot better as businesses with that. And I think I hope we'll see also to be a focusing on not having vanity projects, but actually having businesses that thrive. So actually we can take good care of our people and the communities we are and the planet. And I think we will, within a 5-year period, will we be back at the same capacity levels that we was before? I really don't hope so, because what the problem was pre-pandemic was also there was too many restaurants compared to the amount of customers there was, and there was too many bad restaurants or hospitality business. So actually we needed a shakeout in some kind. I don't want this kind of shakeout for anyone. I would rather have the normal market forces taking care of things. And I think also that some people have lost in this that didn't deserve to be shaken out in any kind of way, because they had all the right intention of doing all the right things. But I think in general you would see that it will be a smaller market, but also hopefully within that a more profitable market. So you actually, as I've said before, really kind of focusing on taking care of the people you employ, the communities you're part, and actually doing maybe a bit for the planet as well. But it's actually gonna be, I think the thing we are scratching the surface about, people talk about sustainable menus and things like that. But I think really we are food. We're gonna come back and become more educational. Have a role in educating people about food and where it comes from and the impact it has on you and the planet. So I think chefs especially are a great way to facilitate this, and talk with Dominic Hawk on that on my last podcast as well, just came out yesterday. So I think there's a big thing that's called the whole climate crisis, and how the industry is going to be involved in that. It's going forward. But I believe this sector will rise again, maybe with some new people and some of the old ones staying. But I also think that it's going to be a tough journey. I think we're just now starting building back up, and then we're going to go into a period where building back up, finding new ways of doing things, because again, we need to find a new way of doing things as well, because we can't pay, extortion rents and stuff like that if we want to make a business work and give profit. So there's a whole conversation around how do we deal with that with landlords and so on. So the next 5 years is complicated, but I think it's going to go upwards. Slowly but surely, but nothing crazy is going to bounce back. And if it does, I'd rather be wrong. But I think it's going to be a tough journey. And if you are thinking about staying or joining the industry, you need to have a long-term mindset about it. You should do that with any business, as you said in the beginning. You cannot just open a business to flip it and sell it. I think those days are in general gone. And I think the pandemic had maybe make that sure. And there's maybe still a couple of tech unicorns that can do that. But I think the days of doing a quick flip of anything, it's going to be gone. I think we think very differently about things. And we have to remember in these 5 years coming, we have totally this world, global situation have changed us as individual, as business people, as humans, I think. And there's a lot of change that comes on the back of that. I don't even know what it is yet. Political, economically, societally, what's going to happen in the world. It's also going to impact what there is a spare cash to spend in the restaurant industry, if you just take it from an economic point of view.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, and that was a really deep dive into people and just the macro look at how people and your staff and your ownership mentality, everything. That was a great. I don't think I've ever done an episode that in depth about like mindset and people ever. But I want to thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to hearing my episode on your show.
It's great because I've listened to it. So you out there, if you listen to this, there's some great nuggets there as well, especially if you are, definitely would say if you are independent operator, you can definitely pick out. I'll also see if you're a CEO, there's definitely that. We also talk about mindset exactly in that. I think that's one of the few things you really can do something about, as we discussed in that episode. So yeah, look out for that. We will post it on the Hospitality Maverick socials and so on. So,
well, thank you so much for your time, sir. I'll chat to you very, very soon.
Yeah, take care, Shawn. Thank you very